Welcome to Under the Bleachers. Chris Ransom, joined by William Yanish. Happy holidays to everybody tuning in. Thanksgiving's tomorrow. The background's a little bit different. As you can tell, I am at my parents' house for Thanksgiving. But yeah, overall, we're going to get into the college football playoff here. Same top 12 as the selection committee for the first time this season. But it's interesting. Yeah, I'm wearing the Pitt soccer shirt. They beat Cornell 1-0, but Cornell scored first. Alex Harris, the guy I was telling you about, the officials called off a goal, though, after review. Very controversial game. I thought Cornell kind of got screwed because they played really well despite losing. But unfortunately, Cornell is not in the college football playoff. I'm sorry to all the Ivy League schools. You can still make the FCS playoffs, but the 12-team playoff is reserved for FBS teams. So,
Yeah,
as far as the top 12 goes, I have Oregon at 1. No surprise. SMU's 2 for me because they haven't lost an ACC game. I think that matters. The selection committee saying that doesn't matter. I disagree with the selection committee there. That should matter when it comes to assessing teams in the playoff. And I have Texas at 3. They're an SEC team. I have Boise at 4. Boise State, Ashton Ginty, they're playing better than any Big 12 team. Frankly, if they were in the Big 12, they would be winning the conference this year. That's just my opinion, unfiltered opinion. I'm not going to apologize for that opinion. I honestly think Boise's that good. Their only loss came to Oregon. I've got Ohio State at 5. Buckeyes are my team, but unless they beat Oregon, they're not moving into the top 4. And even if they beat Oregon, if SMU wins the ACC, I would put SMU at number 1 and Ohio State at 2. And I'm the biggest Buckeyes fan on the planet. But yeah, that's just me. Penn State's number 6, Notre Dame 7. I have the Miami Hurricanes at 8. They have 1 loss. Georgia and Tennessee both have 2 losses, but I have Georgia at 9, Tennessee at 10. Indiana, Miami lost a close game to Georgia Tech. It was a heartbreaker, but it was a competitive game. Indiana got their guts dug out against Ohio State. I'm not going to say anything else on the Indiana game. I do think they've got the right coach in Curt Cignetti. I do think they're going to be good for multiple years. They gave him an 8-year contract worth $8 million a year, only $500,000 less than Dallas Stars goalie Jake Ottinger, who got an 8-year, $8.5 million deal to play goalie for Dallas after his extension. So Curt Cignetti making almost as much over an 8-year span as the Dallas Stars goalie. They're my favorite hockey team. And wrapping this list up, Arizona State, the Big 12 winner. Again, the Big 12's a mosh pit. A lot could happen. Arizona State goes to Arizona. They could very easily lose. Tatoria McMillan could go off in that final game for the Arizona State Sun Devils, or Arizona Wildcats against the Sun Devils. McMillan and Noah Fafita could easily go off in the finale. Iowa State could lose on the road to Kansas. But the only way Colorado can get in is if BYU loses, Texas Tech beats West Virginia, and one of the 2 schools, Iowa State or Arizona State, loses. One of those 2 has to lose in addition to BYU. So they need 3 things to happen, plus they got to win the finale in order for Colorado to qualify. They're not out of it, but they are a massive long shot. I would say 10% to make the Big 12 championship. I think there's just too much working against them, in my opinion. But right now, Arizona State's number 12 based on the tiebreakers. That could very easily change next week depending on what happens in the Big 12 this week. And it's honestly at the tipping point where if everybody in the Big 12 loses this week and Boise loses to UNLV, we're giving Tulane the 4 seed if they win out. UNLV would need to beat Boise. They need help from the Big 12, and they need Army to beat Tulane. I think that's the only way UNLV could get the 4 seed. That's not going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. And even if it did happen, I think they would take the first loss to Boise into account and just award the Big 12 the 4 spot. Even though that's kind of lazy, I think that's what the selection committee would do if UNLV were to win the conference. And even if that happened, I think Tulane would get in over UNLV because Tulane's only losses were to Oklahoma and Kansas State. they went unbeaten in the Atlantic, which nobody's talking about. So I think in that scenario they get in over UNLV unless Army beats them in the American Championship game, William. But I could be wrong there. What am I missing?
I don't know, man. I think the end of the season is going to be just like the rest of this season, and it's not going to disappoint. I mean, there are some teams coming up like South Carolina's they're on a 5-game winning streak, but they still got 3 losses for an SEC team. But in that 5-game winning streak, they beat Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, Mizzou, and Wofford. But still, that's Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Mizzou have been ranked in the top 25 for most of the season before a few weeks ago, and you know I know that question has been raised a lot about a 3-loss team, SEC team, getting into the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to deserve it, and then there's also the point of Alabama saying that, but I feel that everyone, kind of is rooting against Alabama not to get in, just for the fact that they won so much, but they have to realize, this isn't Nick Saban's team. This isn't, this is a whole different culture that's being implemented there, and I mean, they've had their moments, but then they've absolutely bombed some games, like Vanderbilt, for instance.
And they bombed against Oklahoma. Oklahoma crushed Alabama 24-3. Tulane
Yeah.
scored more points on Oklahoma than Alabama did.
There was that pretty questionable call where Ryan Williams caught that touchdown pass, but there was still 10 minutes left, and I mean that was definitely could have been a game-changing thing right there. But still, it's a point that they lost. But however, they still beat Georgia. That's going to be up there. But Georgia's been disappointing this year. Other than that, though, I mean, it's pretty much the same top 12 that's going in there. SMU's coming in there, and Indiana slid down a little bit, but one loss. I mean, after their historic start, isn't going to be that big of a deal. And Boise State, I mean, obviously they're likely to get in there. The thing is that there is a world where no Big 12 team gets in there whatsoever, and I mean, I'm not even sure what that would take, but I know it exists, and like I said, I don't think it's going to disappoint. This is going to be an exciting end of the season, or right into the playoffs, and I think it's definitely going to be exciting. So.
Yep. I mean, we'll preview 3 games. I'm gonna look. We're definitely gonna talk about the game, and we'll talk about Texas A&M versus Vanderbilt. I'll look at the top 25, and I'm throwing a bonus game in. Why am I throwing a bonus game? Because one of these games had to do with my parents' anniversary. My parents' anniversaries happened when, because during the right before the wedding. I believe after the wedding, Tennessee played Vanderbilt at Navy Stadium, like the day my parents got married. So that is the anniversary game in our family. So we will mention Tennessee Vanderbilt. We'll open with that, but I'm seeing what other games feature ranked teams. That's what I'm currently looking at for Week 14. Besides Ohio State, Michigan, because I feel like those are the big 3 this week, William. Ohio State, Michigan.
There's also
Texas A&M and Tennessee Vanderbilt. So,
there's also Clemson and
South Carolina. So that'll be number
be
4. You know what? We're going to open this up with Tennessee, South Carolina. That's one of the games. But Kansas State, Iowa State's ranked too. So there's 3 ranked games. There's Ohio State, Michigan, and Tennessee Vanderbilt. So that's 5. All right, so we'll do those 5. There's other games like Boise State, Oregon, Memphis, Tulane that are fun in theory, but we're not going to have time to get to all those games. So we'll just go with that 5 that I mentioned. We'll start with the non-ranked games and work our way down to the ranked games. We'll start with Tennessee Vanderbilt. The Van Ransom, Joan Ransom anniversary of my parents. They got married. They went to a Knoxville game. I don't have the entire story. All I know is that during the honeymoon, my mom dipped her finger in the Miami Hurricanes cake during the 1986 Sugar Bowl when Miami played Tennessee. So I apologize to Jimmy Johnson if my mom ruined your Sugar Bowl. I'm just, if people fall in love, it only happens once. Do we have to buy the Miami Hurricanes a new cake if they win the ACC title? Like, do we have to actually, does my family have to pay the program for a cake? Because with NIL and the portal, now there's rules with stuff like this. Whereas back in the 80s, nobody cared if you stuck your finger in the cake during a bowl game. Now you probably have to pay for the cake with catering and NIL. It's just how it is now. I don't like it, but that's how it is. But I like Tennessee over Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt needs to win this game. They're the only prayer Alabama has. Basically, Vanderbilt's the best. If Alabama wants in the playoff, they need Vanderbilt to beat Tennessee. That's the only way they're getting in. William, there's just no other path. I mean, Indiana's not losing to Purdue at home. Miami's probably not losing to Syracuse at home. So
Vanderbilt has definitely surprised some people, this season. And
they only lost to Texas by single digits.
Yeah.
I would say Vanderbilt and USC are the two teams with the best chance of pulling off an upset. Maybe Syracuse, but I'm not in Arizona. Those are the four with the best chance. One of them probably will pull an upset, but I don't think all four of them will. And I mean, Vanderbilt's had a really good season.
I am looking at
Tennessee's a better team, and they want this more, and they know what's on the line.
I did notice that with Syracuse, and that's Brandis's alma mater. So I'm sure she'll definitely be rooting for them. So I did eye that as a possible upset, though.
I think Syracuse has the best chance of pulling an upset. If McCord can outduel Cam Ward, I think the Orange have the best chance of this group to pull the upset. But Arizona and Syracuse, if I were picking an upset, I'd go with the Wildcats or the Orange this week. As much as I like USC, they've been way too inconsistent to knock off a team like Notre Dame. And I think the same could be said with Vanderbilt, even though you have to admire the fact that they beat Alabama. They beat number 1 Florida State in women's soccer. They only lost to Texas by single digits. So I like Tennessee over Vanderbilt. And if you're into Tennessee football, we're going to be previewing James Pierce Jr. in the outside linebacker rankings on Saturday. He is the top 34 outside linebacker in the draft, even though he's an edge rusher. But he's under 250, so he's going to play 34 outside linebacker in the NFL. That's going to be his role. All right, next up is the game. Michigan, Ohio State. Michigan's had our number the last few years, but the Buckeyes, they came out, they looked angry, they made a statement. I look for more of the same. I'll go, I think last week it was 34-7 Ohio State. I will go 27-14. Michigan actually covers the spread, but the Buckeyes win.
Yeah, I definitely think the Buckeyes are going to win. This is a game that they're not going to,
There's too much on the line. They've lost to Michigan 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
But the spread is way too high. It's 20.5. Will Johnson's supposed to be back. Michigan's defensive tackles are going to match up well against Ohio State's interior offensive line with Seth McLaughlin tearing his ACL and Donovan Jackson moving over to left tackle for Josh Simmons. I think Michigan's defensive tackles are going to make Ohio State earn every inch they get in the running game. And it's going to come down to Will Howard and his decision-making versus these Michigan corners. And he has the weapons to expose Michigan, but until Ryan Day beats Michigan, I can't give him the benefit of doubt. I've watched Ohio State lose 3 years in a row. I got to see them win, but I think they do win. But Michigan covers the spread.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Michigan. They haven't had a consistent quarterback this year. Between Davis Warren and Alex Orji, and like you said, the defense might be able to, keep it interesting against Ohio State, but I definitely think Ohio State's going to win.
I agree. We talked about the unranked games. We talked about Tennessee Vanderbilt. We talked about Michigan, Ohio State. We're going to move to South Carolina to talk about South Carolina Clemson, number 15 versus number 12. This is basically an audition game for the playoff if somebody slips up, but only if somebody slips up. And I think the only teams that may end up slipping up are Miami or Tennessee. I don't see any, or Arizona State. I don't see anybody else slipping up. I flirted with taking USC, but I just can't see them beating Notre Dame at home.
Yeah, I don't see that either. Like you said, so not consistent, and just how they've been. So I mean,
I hope Sellers and Klubnik come back, because if both come back and both play like they have down the stretch for an entire year next year, I think both can sneak into round one of next year's draft and be in that conversation with Nico Imaleva, with Arch Manning, with Garrett Nussmeier. I think those guys can enter that conversation in a year from now, but they're still developing.
Yeah, Klubnik's definitely he's gotten a lot more than like I mentioned before, and being so streaky.
I would say Klubnik's more refined than Sellers, because first 2 years with Klubnik were trial and error, and then the Georgia game was more trial and error, and then he just came out dealing after the Georgia game, even though he's still been inconsistent at times.
That's what I saw, evaluating him and stuff, is he's actually become a bit more consistent this year, throwing 29 touchdowns versus 4 interceptions. And I mean, I think he's definitely, he should come back next year, because I mean, he's got a shot.
Sellers reminds me of Anthony Richardson, but I don't think he reads as many progressions as Richardson did from a decision-making standpoint. He's got to get that fixed and show the initiative to fix that next year at South Carolina. But if he does, he's got the talent to get into round one. But he could also be a guy who ends up disappointing you, like Caleb Williams and Bryce Young disappointed you. That's the thing with Sellers. But if he gets hot and South Carolina gets hot, they're a dangerous team, because Sellers is under the radar. Their freshman edge rusher is under the radar, even though he's going to be a first in 2027. That South Carolina is an under the radar team. I'm going to take Clemson, but South Carolina only loses this game by a field goal.
Yeah. I'm actually going to do the opposite of that, and I'm going to take Klubnik and Clemson, because, I was thinking about it before
we both took Clemson to win. Are you taking South Carolina to win now because I took Clemson to win?
You took Clemson to win?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I'll take Clemson to win. I think the one thing it's going to come down to it, because South Carolina is going to, say, oh, yeah, maybe we deserve a shot at the playoffs, which, like you said, unless somebody slips up. I mean, like I mentioned, that 5-game winning streak and everything else, but I do like Klubnik just a little bit more as a quarterback. But, South Carolina is going to be extra motivated, so it's definitely going to be a close game.
Yep. And the next game features... Next game is a ranked game between... both Texas A&M, and Kansas State, Iowa State start at 7:30. We're going to start with Kansas State, Iowa State. Iowa State is the home team. I thought Kansas State was the home team. This says Iowa State's the home team. Google, is it at Iowa State? If Iowa State's the home team, I'm picking the Cyclones. Okay. Because it shows Iowa State 42, Kansas State 35. That was last year's game shootout.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm shooting on my phone, so.
Yeah, and that was in the snow. That Iowa State went to Kansas State in the snow and beat Will Howard. Oh, I think Will Howard got benched for the freshman for that game, but still, Iowa State, they found a way to win that game. 42-35, and it was a snowy game. The weather in Iowa State should be a lot better. I like the Cyclones. I think the Cyclones are going to punch a ticket to the championship, but it's either going to be BYU or Colorado, and in order for Colorado to get in, they need Arizona to win. They need BYU to lose at home. BYU is going to play Houston at home at 10:15, so they need Houston to lose. And Colorado, if they lose, I believe Colorado plays before BYU, because BYU doesn't play Houston until 10 p.m. Yeah, Colorado plays Oklahoma State on Black Friday at home. So if they lose that game on Black Friday, then BYU's in. They can pretty much just rest their starters if let's say Arizona State loses to Arizona. I'm guessing that's a 10 p.m. game too, because they don't want. I'm double checking. Yeah, that's got to be a 10 p.m. game, but I am double checking the start time for that one.
Yeah.
Just to make sure we have everything in place here.
Yeah, and the problem with Arizona from last year is you know, their head coach.
Yeah, that's
Jed
a
Fish.
3:30 game. That's a 3:30 game, 12:30
Yeah.
on the West Coast. So BYU, Arizona State can finish things early, but if they lose, BYU is going to have to play for something, and that's going to be a 10 p.m. game. So Colorado, even if they win, they're going to know their fate probably by the middle of the day, because I believe Texas Tech plays West Virginia as well around 3:30. So yeah.
Yeah, you know, like you said, Arizona winning, but you know, Jed Fish, he went on to fish, went on went on to coach at Washington, and you know, he left Arizona, and I think that's been a lot of problem with them and Noah Fafita. You know, I mean, just that same coaching doesn't matter. You know, and I mean, but you know, between
I think
between
Iowa State
Kansas State and
no
Iowa
matter
State.
who they play, but I would say it's Iowa State BYU, since Iowa State and BYU are both at home this week. Colorado's at home too, but I just don't know if they're going to get the help they need. Texas Tech, West Virginia. I'll look that up really quickly because Texas Tech has to beat West Virginia. That's the tiebreaker Colorado needs, and Texas Tech is the home game in that, Williams. So Texas Tech might keep Colorado alive until 3:30. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking Texas Tech's going to beat West Virginia. Texas Tech's going to beat West Virginia because that's going to keep the drama alive. Think about it. If West Virginia wins, it eliminates Colorado before the 3:30 game. The Big 12 does not want that. They want all this drama. They want the never-ending story of conference play in the Big 12, where it's not decided who's in the Big 12 title until 1 a.m. That's what the Big 12 wants.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, Iowa State, you know, they surprised everybody starting out how they did, but they've been in the college football playoff, you know, conversation since the beginning of the season, you know, and I
Kansas State's
I
just
think that they have to do something, you know.
I mean,
And
Kansas State's had some nice wins against Colorado at home and Arizona on the road, but as a team, they've underachieved. They lost to a BYU team they should have beaten, and they've just underachieved on the road this year. So I like Iowa State, even though
yeah,
they lost to Texas Tech and they lost to some bad teams. They haven't underachieved to the degree Kansas State has.
right, right. I definitely like Iowa State to win. Like I said, they have something to prove, you know, after being talked about
They
the
beat
entire season.
Kansas State on the road last year. Now they've got Jalen Travis from Princeton at left tackle in the portal. So, all right, last game of this. Finally, we get to the headline game. It is the Longhorns. It is the Aggies. Who is going to meet the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC title? It's at Kyle Field, and this is the first Texas A&M game since both teams were in the Big 12, I believe. So the stakes could not be higher for the old Big 12 rivalry between the two Titans in Texas, who are both now in the SEC.
That's what I was just gonna bring up. What was that? You know, that they're kind of renewing a rivalry here, but I see Texas as being too much for them. Texas A&M is another one. You know, between having Connor Weigman and Marcel Reed at quarterback, you know, they haven't had anybody real consistent, and they've been so far up and down. I just think Texas is going to be way too much for them in this game.
Yeah, Texas A&M lost to Auburn in triple overtime last week. I saw the end of the game. It was so ugly for Texas A&M that if Charles Barkley decided to roast Texas A&M, I'd probably look the other way for Charles Barkley, because I know he likes to make jokes about inhabitants in San Antonio, but I'm going to leave it at that. You can watch Inside the NBA if you want to hear the full scoop of jokes, but like, as far as Texas goes, I think the Longhorns, they have They have Arch Manning. It doesn't matter which quarterback they play. They've got Banks at left tackle. They got Cameron Williams at right tackle. Jake Majors at center. I think their offensive line's more complete. But the Texas offensive line versus the Texas A&M defensive line with Shamari Turner, Nick Scorton, I think that is going to be what decides this game. I think Texas A&M's defensive line has to get the best of Texas's offensive line, and they got to rattle the quarterback. They got to rattle sophomore running back C.J. Baxter. Well, C.J. Baxter got injured at the beginning of the year, but they got to rattle his backup because C.J. Baxter took over for Jonathan Brooks down the stretch last year as a freshman. So, yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, Texas A&M, they've just been too inconsistent. They beat number 9 Mizzou and followed by number 8 LSU, and then the losses they've just had,
The
Auburn.
losses they had are ugly. They lost to
Yeah.
Notre Dame, which was a respectable loss at the time, but then they got routed by South Carolina, and then they lost in triple overtime to Auburn.
Yeah.
I mean, you can understand losing to Auburn. If the Auburn game was their only SEC loss, I could understand them getting the benefit of the doubt as a playoff team. They really have to win out in order to get in the playoff.
Yeah. And I think it's gonna, depend on which team shows up, whether this game is even competitive or not. And I don't think it's
Yeah,
gonna be
because
much of that.
honestly, the only way A&M wins is if their defensive line wins the one-on-ones against the Longhorns' offensive line, and Connor Weigman plays turnover-free ball, and Texas A&M is able to get a few turnovers off of Ewers or Manning. That's legitimately the only way I can see Texas.
I mean, they could, if Ewers and Manning were to get knocked out of the game, maybe they'd have a shot. But yeah, I don't think so. But yeah, let's see.
Yeah, so we pretty much covered everything college football related. Is there anything else we need to add? I mean, we can preview the conference championships next week and take a look at the updated standings. I don't think we have anything else to cover, and we kept things short and to the point, and we got everything done in under 30 minutes, which I consider a win because I scheduled both shows for 4 and 5 p.m. just in case. Just in case we're having some technical issues, but
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. Everything ran smoothly outside of my camera not working, but I'm going to, we'll end this show. We'll still go live at 4:45, but I am going to try to take a few minutes to get my camera working on this. If I can't by 4:45, we'll go live then. And I'll texting Joey now to see if he wants to call in. I think his phone goes off at around like 5 p.m. and he doesn't answer it when he's on the bus from Walmart. But I am trying to reach out because I know he's got nothing to do on Thanksgiving Day, but I also know that he might be busy with work. I don't know his schedule, but I'm reaching out because usually, he took a nap yesterday. That's why he didn't send the pics yet. But I'm just trying to get on top of things. But yeah.
To anybody watching, I just
everybody else has sent me their picks for this week, and I've got 14 games up. I just got to get the Sunday night, Monday night write-ups done, check the injury reports, and then I'm done. And I can promote the article tonight, maybe before the games, which would be good because then I can get some code for week 14 done and relax a little bit on Thanksgiving. Just be thankful to be alive. But yeah.
Well, I just like to thank everyone watching. Happy and safe Thanksgiving.
Everybody who called into this show, whether it's Rocky Lombardi, whether it's Brandis, whether it's someone else, just thank everyone
that's been a part of it.
Invested in Under the Bleachers.
That's what I'm thankful for. Everything that has to do with this, man. So,
amen.
Other than that,